3. I've got 4, 5, and 6 scheduled, but no one for episode 3. So I'm talking to Ryan, which, if you guys don't know, Ryan and I have become friends, online away from the podcast. And we talk pretty frequently throughout the week. So just nerding out over nerd stuff and sharing ideas and whatnot. But Ryan agreed to step in last minute. He's like, hey, man, I'll come on the podcast. I'm like, yes. Awesome, man. Ryan, you were one of my favorite guests that I've had, and I'm glad to have you back, dude.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's good to be back on.
So I want to ask you something. I know you weren't really expecting this. Now, this is our second time recording this. Let's be honest here. I forgot to hit record, and I was trying to catch you off guard with this question, but now I can't because I've already asked the question, and I have to go back and ask it again. But what's going on with Talking Snicked, man? Because you put out an episode basically saying Talking Snicked is no more. You're done with the podcast. But is it really gone? Are you doing a Ross and Rachel thing? Like, what's going on here?
Well, I hope not. I'd feel really bad if I come back again in like another year and do 4 or 5 more episodes and then call it quits and then come back. I mean, that's not any fun to the listeners. No, I came back and I was, super hyped up and I was really excited to get back into X-Men, especially Wolverine stuff. And then I just hit a wall. I covered the Return of Wolverine event and all those minis that kind of tied in with it. And it was really exciting. I got really amped up and I was like, hey, man, I'm rewatching the X-Men cartoon from the 90s. I'm going to start podcasting about that too. Because, I mean, that's why I wanted to start X-Men podcasting in the first place. And then I hit a wall, and then suddenly it was like, hey, this is a job again all of a sudden, and that's not what I signed on for when I thought about coming back. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna step away. The site that I was using for hosting was out of pocket and everything, and I just didn't really feel like dropping all that money to keep a podcast going that I didn't have any plans for. Luckily, you're a good influence on me. So you suggested I at least move the feed over to a free hosting thing. So that's what I did. Talking Snicked was going to be done Sunday. I was going to cancel the hosting, cancel the feed and everything. And it's not going to happen. So I moved it over. I'm going to be on Anchor now, and I should be available all the same places. But yeah, right now I don't have any plans to record anything further. It just started feeling like a job. And if I'm going to devote time to making a dream come true, that's going to be a job. It's going to be something else, something that we've talked about. I jumped into another writing class through Comics Experience, and I'm really going to try to pursue that and see where that writing thing leads. I've got a lot of ideas, and I just figured it was time to start getting them out.
That's cool, man. You sent me a copy of one of your scripts for a book, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great, and I think it's commendable that you can look at it and say, like, I'm going to step away from this, because I don't know. I think it would be hard. It's like, because you do love the thing, and you've put all this time into it already, and it feels like, if I step away now, it's like, what was all that time for? But I'm really glad that you're keeping the feed alive, at least, because I think people are going to continue to find it and continue to listen for the first time. It'll be first time, and they're going to be like, and even if they're not getting new episodes, what did you do? 80 something episodes or something like?
Yeah, 87, I think, total episodes, including the Snicktoons stuff. So about 85 covering Wolverine comics and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that would be a lot of, I think, treasured content to just flush down the toilet and be like, oh, it never happened. You know what I mean? So I'm really glad you're keeping the feed alive. That's good, because I want to go back and listen to some of them, I'm glad you're doing that. But I think it's really cool that you have an even deeper passion for something like writing, and that you want to pursue that. Like, that's, I sometimes drag my love for creativity and stuff onto this podcast as well. Like, I'll bring on guests that are creative or pursue creative endeavors, and and you'll hear me gush about how creative something is or how cool something, you know what I mean? Like, well, oh man, what would it have been like to be in that writer's room? I can't just sit here and break down the episode like beat for beat and that's it. And it's these other things. I'm not everyone might not know this on this podcast, but I do several podcasts. I have like 4 podcasts in total, and it's all over the place. It runs the gamut. It's not just comic book content. It's not just TV shows. It's like everything. And I so I really appreciate a lot of things, and it's hard for me not to include it a little bit here. You know what I mean? Like, it's just part of who I am. So I really appreciate that aspect of you. You know what I mean? You're a writer, dude, and you're a good writer. I enjoy the stuff you've written, and
Thanks.
I look forward to you sending me some more stuff or seeing some stuff get published that you put out.
Yeah, yeah. This place I'm going through, they've got like a creators workshop, which is just a bunch of different forums with other writers that can help critique your work. They've got professionals in there, like Fred Van Lente is a writer that does all kinds of stuff, and he commonly jumps on there, does critiques. Paul Aller, Andy Schmidt is the guy that runs the whole thing. So, I mean, they've got top-notch professionals. They've got other like-minded creators that are just out there trying to do the same thing, helping each other get better. They've got artists and stuff. They've got programs where, once you have a final script, you can hire them and they'll go out and contract you a letterer and an inker and a penciler and an editor, and they'll help you get the book finished and, ready to market. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on now. Not everyone's in the same boat that I am. I was kind of lucky in that we were able to get some stimulus this year that we didn't have to put towards like paying rent and stuff.
Mhm.
Like, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in situations over the last year and a half that are really unfortunate. And, we own our house and we're sec- secure. I have a job, a full-time job that I've been able to do from home. And so um, I'm trying to put some of those dollars somewhere else. I figured, why not a small business, a creator-owned, artistic outlet is a good place, I think, is worthy of spending some money there. So I figured this was the year.
Yeah, invest in yourself, man. That's all I'm always saying that. Like, there's no better place. You know what I mean? Than like it's better than the stock market. You can
Yeah.
not only see return. I mean, you're going to see returns. You know what I mean? It's not really as much of a gamble when you're investing in yourself. Like I dig that.
Yeah.
So for this Loki series, I let me pull up my notes here. All right. Well, first off, how did you feel about the series going in? Like, actually, hold on. A better question is, how did you feel about the Loki series before they even put a trailer out or anything? Like, we heard the announcement there's going to be a Loki series, and then also, how did you feel after you saw those trailers? And now, how do you feel halfway through the series? What do you think so far? So,
All right.
start off, yeah. How did you feel when you first heard, hey, we're going to put out a Loki series on Disney Plus?
I thought, all right, well, I mean, he's a character, so I guess give him a series. I know that he's a fan favorite character. Hasn't really been one of mine. I really think that Tom Hiddleston does an awesome job as Loki, and whenever he's on screen, it's a lot of fun. But it's whatever. He's the god of mischief, and he messes up. I mean, not to jump too far ahead, but the line where Mobius kind of points out, where he's like, "Dude, all you do is fail. Like every
Yeah,
scheme you have ends in failure." And it's kind of that's how I felt coming in. Like, all right, we're just gonna watch a series of Loki messing some stuff up. Okay, whatever. I'll watch it, but like I'm not all that interested or excited. And then that first trailer dropped, and it was like, okay, wow. I
yeah,
didn't have any expectations, and somehow they're shattered. Like this looks awesome, and I have no idea what's going on, which I think makes it
yeah.
even more fun. And now here we are, 3 episodes in, and I don't know what to expect. And I've really enjoyed the episodes that I've seen. Halfway through the show, like I said, I don't know what's going on. I can't even guess what they're building towards, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, dude. So I feel the same way. I think this has serious potential. This series, especially in terms of like greater MCU, like how it's going to affect the MCU. Fingers crossed. X-Men. I got I got to throw in an obligatory X-Men reference every episode. Um, I'm
It's
sure
gonna
the
happen at some point.
yeah, if I'm gonna bring on people who do X-Men podcasts and love the X-Men as much as I do, I think we're gonna have to work it into every episode. So, but yeah, I'm sure the audience is like, what are you doing? Why are you still talking about like there's no X-Men? So I feel the same way. I feel like Hiddleston makes this character, right? It's not I wouldn't care about it if it wasn't him doing it. And I didn't even know the guy before I saw him as Loki. So it's not like,
Right.
it's not like, oh, my favorite actor's playing this character I don't know. I didn't care about Loki. And then honestly, in the beginning, I still didn't care about Loki. I mean, like I didn't think he could carry his own series. I didn't think, like, especially after we've seen him so much already throughout the
Hmm.
Thor films, Avengers, several Avengers films. It's like, what more can you do with this guy but uh throw him into a story where he's traveling through time? Like, I'm game. Like, you could uh and he's gotten better. So
Hmm.
the first incarnation of Loki from Thor and from Avengers, I'm like, okay, you know. But by the time we get to him being killed off in Infinity War, I'm like, I love this character. Like, I love this character. And now with the series, I've never loved him more. Like that first episode, I was like, okay, I'm a guy. I guess I'm a Loki fan because I that's how I'm feeling right now. Like, I love this dude.
Yeah,
But
who
yeah,
knew they
it's
were gonna have Loki feels, in like
yeah,
the first episode where he's going through and he's watching what is it, the sacred timeline events of what
mhm,
happened to Loki, and there's pain on his face, and you're like, I didn't even realize this character had that depth. It's not to say that Tom as an actor doesn't, but like we didn't expect we were going to see that from Loki in a series.
yeah. The eternal screw up. The foil all the time. The
Hmm.
guy that's messing things up and like failing at his job. Um, yeah, who would have thought that right away you'd be feeling that way? I I feel the same way. I think it's a credit to the acting, but it's also, and I'm sure you can appreciate, a credit to the writing, like the writers on this series, like evoking emotion right out of the gate. Like when they showed showed him that his mother was going to die, you know, soon after, like when he got plucked from the timeline.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, feels, man. It was like, oh man, like this guy just got crushed. Like and you, I don't know. You would think at that point in his career, he was a villain, right? He was just a straight up villain. That was it.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think that you could feel for the villain like that. You know what I mean? But because we've seen the kind of uh, story arc that he has through all the films, we saw him kind of start to turn the corner, maybe, and do some things right, and then get killed. So it's like, oh, but yeah, okay. So I hate to do this, or I don't hate to do this. I don't mind doing it at all. But some people, some people hate when I do this. Um, so far, what do you think of this series compared to the first two?
Ooh. Um, I still think that Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the best of the series. I just felt that it lived up to it lived up to the Cap legacy. I mean, the Cap trilogy is easily the best trilogy in the MCU.
Yes.
And Falcon and Winter Soldier, I felt it really carried on that legacy and lived up to it. And with WandaVision and Loki, I mean, these are kind of like, it's uncharted territory. We don't really know what to expect. Um, and WandaVision was very stylized for the first act, and then after that it really just kind of everything fell apart, not series wise but for the character.
Hmm.
And we're kind of seeing that it's already fallen apart for Loki. Like, we're jumping in here, everything's already fallen apart, and it's tonally it's completely different, which is also a nice breath of
Yes.
fresh air. With the MCU gets a lot of flack, I think, for, despite the fact that it's so good, being so tonally similar from one film to the next.
Yeah.
Seeing
Formulaic.
those tone shifts in these three series has been great. So I mean, I'd say that it stands up next to the other two in being awesome and being new and being different. I don't know if I can rank them all yet. to be honest. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier is above the other two, but I don't know if I can rank Loki and WandaVision yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it has potential, honestly, to be the best. Only because, like, and I'm the same as you. I love Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and it's so interesting that I talk to, and this is why I do the podcast this way. I talk to different people all the time, and episode to episode, I'm surprised. Like when I talk to someone, and I'm like, and I'm sure that they probably agree with me that Falcon and the Winter Soldier is the best, and they're like, oh no, I actually prefer WandaVision. I'm like, really? Like, but it's like whatever floats your boat, man. Like everybody has their own series. It's fantastic that and you're right, the series are different enough that people are differentiating them like that. They're like, oh well, this one is better. Oh no, this one is better. And it's pretty equal parts from what I've seen. So it's like they're clearly different if people have that strong of an opinion of which one is better, But yeah, I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier for me was, and I'm a huge Cap series fan, so it was the best. And I think I can't say yet that this one's better than WandaVision. I think I'm probably enjoying it more at this point than I was at WandaVision at the halfway point. But what's cool about it, the similarities are that it's a mystery. You know what I mean? And there's a lot to speculate about. Where Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you couldn't speculate as much. It was more grounded, more. You could kind of speculate about some things, but this one is like everything. You're looking for Easter eggs that might give you clues to what's really going on behind the scenes. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier wasn't quite like that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I do enjoy about it. It gives us a lot more to talk about here on the podcast when there's all this speculation and theory flying around. And then another thing that's fun about it is the science fiction angle. Like it's all time travel and possible alternate realities. And that's right up my alley. Like I will watch the most obscure film on earth that has a 26 on Rotten Tomatoes if it says time travel in the description. Like that's how nuts I am for this genre. So time travel, parallel universes, wormholes like in space that lead to other dimensions, I'm all for it. So it was once I saw the trailer, I was all in on Loki. But now that I've actually seen the series, I'm like, I feel justified in being excited from the trailer. So yeah. All right, so let's jump in here. Let's jump into the episode. We're already, 15, almost 20 minutes into this episode. We haven't even started talking about Loki episode 3 yet. So
nice.
All right. And you were worried that this wouldn't be a very long podcast.
I was like, slice of life episode bookended by a couple little action sequences. Are we going to have a lot to talk about? And yeah, no problems.
Okay. So, first thing I noticed in this series, or not in this series, in this episode, I love when they do this. When they do the opening sequence, the Marvel logo, but with a random song in the background, is like they did an Endgame. I love it. I love when they do that. Like, I especially loved it in Endgame, but it worked really good here, and I don't even know this song that they used, but I'm kind of convinced that anything works. Like you could put like bluegrass banjo behind this thing, and it would still be awesome. But what do you think about that when they do that? When they use like a random song behind the logo instead of that like Marvel Studios music?
Right, yeah. Instead of the well-known fanfare, they just kind of come in with some random song. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I didn't know the song. I can't say that I've ever heard it. I mean, maybe, but if I did, I didn't recognize it hearing it on the episode. So I just like it because it starts off and you're like, all right, the episode's starting, and then this music's playing, and so obviously they're going to come into a scene or something's going to be happening that fits the tone of this music, but it's a song I didn't know, so I didn't really know what to expect, and it worked perfectly because it leads them right into the beginning scene, and it fits really well. tonally and everything. It just kind of sets it right up. It's like, hey, this is going to be a fun little opening, and then it's maybe not so much. So it's kind of setting this false expectation and then shattering that, in the first scene, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. You know what? I was just thinking about. I don't feel like this works anywhere else. Like you could not have the Star Wars crawl and then have like another one bites the dust playing in the background. Like no one would be cool with that.
No,
It's
not at all.
you know what I mean? It's got to be the iconic music. But with Marvel, they've done this thing where I don't know what the first movie they did it in, maybe Guardians or something. But
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Sounds right.
Yeah, I think it might have been Guardians, and then they did it in Endgame, and that was wonderful because we waited that year wondering what was going to happen next, and then it was like I don't know. There's something about the way they do this, man. It makes me feel like even these credits are part of the show or part of the movie or whatever you're watching. Like it doesn't feel separate. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is just the intro. I don't know. I love it though. Okay,
I think
so
it kind of fits with Stan Lee's whole thing, where like the Marvel universe is the universe that's right outside your window. Like here we
yeah,
are in this like a place outside of time, right? Like where the Time Masters live, and it's this really fantastical, really like you said, sci-fi big giant thing that I mean it could be larger than life. It could be anything that they want it to be. And instead they're like, hey, we're going to focus on the real world. Like we're going to anchor every episode, or at least we're going to anchor this episode with, a pop song or like a rock song or whatever that maybe you don't recognize, but like it's obvious that this is an Earth song and that this is an American
yes,
song. Like they just bring you
yeah.
right into the real world.
Yes, yes, I love it. All right, so we open with a little bit of a rewind because we get to see how C20 revealed where the timekeepers are. We got Lady Loki convincing her to give up the timekeepers, right? And I feel like them showing us this is important. Like this illusion that she's created to where C20 who is that? Sasha Lane playing C20. I I was going to go into this whole, but we're already like 30 minutes in. I was going to like talk about Sasha Lane in a movie that I really like with her in it, but I'm going to skip over that. Um, so I feel like this scene is really important though. Like I think it's going to come back later. I've heard theories from other people saying that it might be relevant to this specific episode. But I feel like there's going to be a moment and it fits perfectly with the character Loki and what we've seen from him and his world that we're going to get something that feels really real, maybe almost an entire episode worth, right? And then you're going to find out it was all an illusion the entire time inside one of the person's heads. Like, did you get that at all? Do you think this might be some foreshadowing?
Yeah, very well could be. Because otherwise, I don't know how they're going to get off where they are. And, we'll talk about that as we get to the end of the episode. But
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they call back to it more than once throughout the episode, through the dialogue and stuff,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's definitely very, very important. And it's definitely like it builds on something that we've seen from Loki in the past, which is these little illusions, these magic tricks that he does, and then
Yep.
seeing something so large scale, it's just kind of like it's going to shatter his world if that's the case. And it
Yeah.
also shows how powerful this Loki variant, this Lady Loki, is if
Mm-hmm.
she's able to do that. So we'll see.
Okay, so we get that whole scene. She finds out where the timekeepers are, and we jump right back to where we were at the end of last week. We had her jumping through the portal, Loki following her into the portal. So we see her come out of the dimensional portal inside the TVA. And I didn't know that's where she was heading right away, but apparently she's going for the timekeepers right now. So she's headed right for the timekeepers, taking out guards left and right, real Black Widow style. Maybe I'm just excited for the Black Widow movie for us to finally get an MCU film. But every time she's fighting, it reminds me of a Black Widow fight scene, right? So Loki pops out not far behind her, and he's like pleading with her the whole time, right? Like, we should team up, we should work together, like. but they kind of have different goals, right? They have he wants to take over the TVA. She just wants to wipe it out. She wants to destroy it. So with the distraction of them fighting with each other, the guards start to overwhelm them, and Loki transports both of them through another portal that dumps them onto Lamentis 1, a moon that is imminently doomed. And the year is 2077, but I'm not sure how much that detail matters. It doesn't seem like that matters. We just know that it's another one of those apocalyptic events, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the pair are dodging incoming meteorites before they find shelter, and then Lady Loki tries some enchantment on Loki to get him to hand over that temp pad that he has that's transporting them around. And he tells her, that's not going to work. His mind's too strong for enchantment to work on him. So it's firmly established here, right? If you hadn't already figured that out from the last episode, the end of the episode 2, that these two do not trust each other, right? And they have those very different goals, right? She wants to destroy the TVA. He wants to rule the TVA. I kind of think, tell me what you think about this.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that Loki, the reason he wants to take over the TVA, I think deep down is to save his mother. And it's going to come up later in this episode again, but I kind of already thought that going into this episode. So I'll bring it up now. But what do you think about that idea?
No, I think you're right. There's a reason why they focused on her so much in the first episode, where Mobius has kind of taken Loki through, all the things that happened. Where he walks him through the events of like the Dark World, right, or the Dark World.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, when Loki is able to escape, not the very end, but when he's able to escape, and he gets in that loop kind of deal. Like that's kind of the thing that gets him to jump out of that, is like seeing that scene again, that replay again, and I think seeing the power that the TVA has, and knowing that you can kind of change timelines, that he might want to go back and save his mom as well. I mean, he's the god of mischief, so I think being able to muck around in time is also just enticing to his ego anyway.
Yeah.
Think of all the mischief you can manage in every different timeline and all that. But yeah, I think ultimately there definitely seems to be a driving force behind all of that, and I think it's the guilt over what he witnessed himself do to his mother.
Yeah, I think also something I love about the character, at least what they're doing here in this series, is they're making it very much that he's this very vulnerable and possibly really good person, like deep down, but he has to maintain this facade, right, of like being the god of mischief. And I think I heard it from one of the comics at one point. Like someone was referencing one of the comics where he said something along the lines of like, well, if this is what they think of me, then that's what I'll give them. Basically, like they thought the worst of him, and so he's like, okay, I mean, if that's how they see me, like I'll show them what bad really is. I feel like in this series it's really like that. Like he was talking to Mobius in episode 2, and that's or in episode 1, and it seemed like, when Mobius said something about him being like a frightened little boy or whatever, or no, here's what it was. Loki was talking about the Asgardians and how they were really just like frightened children, and they were putting up a facade of like power and strength and whatever. And then it got flipped around on him later in the episode, and he had to admit to being that scared, vulnerable person. I feel like the series is playing with that really well, because he keeps declaring that he wants to rule the TVA and like take over and all this, and I think his real aim is saving his mom, like I said, and that's just his excuse for it. You know what I mean? Like to everyone else, like, well, I want to rule here. I want to take over.
Yeah, no, it's in character for sure.
Yeah. So The temp pad that she's trying to get from him. It this is just ridiculous. Okay, the temp pad is low on batteries. Like it's got a low battery warning, and I just think it's ridiculous that this this like otherworldly device that transports people to different realities and dimensions runs on double A's. Like, what kind of technology is this that they're using that has a low battery?
I like the warning too, where it's like low on juice, low on juice.
Yeah. I thought it was great. Okay. Actually, I keep saying this. I keep saying that like we're jumping to different realities. We actually haven't done that. Like I'm getting ahead of myself. This device that they have transports them to different points on the sacred timeline.
Mhm.
We haven't actually seen anyone in this series visit other timelines at all. So I'm probably just getting excited for, once again, X-Men. X-Men. But yeah, I think I've been getting ahead of myself the whole time. Like in the first episode, we were talking about going to different points on the timeline, and I'm thinking about going to different points, universally. Like we're going to different timelines, but they're not. They're actually just going backwards and forwards in time. So
Yeah,
my mistake.
for now.
Right. Yeah. It seems like it has to be where it's going, right? That's what they're doing here. Okay. All right. So they need to find a significant power source to recharge the temp pad.
Mhm.
And you and I talked a little bit before recording the episode, just about how good the dialogue was in this series. Like it was mostly dialogue between him and her. And I think that the back and forth between them is great. Like as much as I love him and Owen Wilson together, which I probably do love them together a little bit more, honestly, but this is up there. Like they have a really good chemistry, like a really good back and forth here.
Yeah, they really do. You expect it to be kind of short and quippy and witty and stuff coming from Loki and Lady Loki, but they don't shy away from like getting into deep, meaningful conversation almost right off the bat.
Yeah.
Of like discussing the meaning of love or the definition of love and
Hmm.
all these things. Like that's some heavy talk, and like they just kind of jump right into it. Like they test each other a little bit, and they're like, "All right, we're equals. Let's have this big philosophical discussion right in the
Yeah.
middle of this planet or this moon that's about to be destroyed."
Yeah. Well, who better to have like a deep discussion with than yourself, right?
Right? Yeah.
So it probably would be easy to fall right into like a deep, meaningful conversation if you were talking to yourself. Like that's a good work, writers. All right, so now, she during this walk, like I said, the dialogue is fantastic. At first, it's just bickering, right? It's back and forth. It's like I'll kill you, no, I'll kill you.
Mhm.
But it quickly evolves into what you're saying, like these deep, meaningful conversations, or at least it seems that way. So I only know what I've heard other people say. And she reveals that her name is Sylvie, right? She doesn't like the name Loki. He was calling her like, "Oh, are you sure you're a Loki?" And she's like, "Don't call me that.
Mhm.
I don't go by that anymore." So she says she goes by Sylvie now, and it's an alias. And this is what I've heard other people say. I don't know about it. I haven't read these comics at all. So everyone says that Sylvie is Enchantress from the comics. Now, I don't know anything about Enchantress. I really don't know anything when it comes to Loki or like Thor or Asgardian comic book background. I don't know any of that. So this is all new stuff to me. But do you know anything about Enchantress or Sylvie or whoever that character is?
Yeah, the name Sylvie didn't ring any bells with me or mean anything. Enchantress did, and I started thinking actually very early on in this episode that it might be Enchantress and not necessarily the Lady Loki from the comics that we all know. Only because she's got blonde hair, and of course Enchantress is a blonde bombshell in the comics, right? The way she's always
Mhm.
drawn, she's very beautiful. A lot of times she uses her feminine wiles to try to seduce people in the comics and stuff, as as a means to making mischief and supporting her own plans as well as Loki's plans if they're in league. But I mean, as far as the comics go, no, I'm not really a Thor guy. I've read, I read the first 5 issues of like the Walt Simonson run on Thor. That's considered, one of the best runs of anything at Marvel. It's
Mhm.
up there with the top 5 or 6 runs on anything. But I've really only read like the Beta Ray Bill stuff from that run. So yeah, I'm not really a big Thor guy. I know Enchantress a little bit from Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the cartoon from like
Okay.
2008, 2009 that was excellent, by the way.
Yes.
But she's one of she's one of the Masters of Evil in that, and it turns out she was working for Loki, I think, to actually double cross the Masters of Evil because they were actually using them to start like a war of the realms kind of deal. I think it's been a
Okay.
while since I've watched it, so I might be mixing it up with like something I read on Wikipedia. But I think that was the gist of it. Is like she was on the Masters of Evil to manipulate them in order to get Loki all the power so that he can take over Asgard and start some war. That was like the whole arc of like the first season, and it was awesome. It was really good. Um,
Yeah, that actually, I think that was from the series because I I, I seem to kind of remember that a little bit. I actually have all of those on DVD, all this because
oh,
I
nice.
remember I remember when the series was new. I used to watch it. I had my stepdaughter at the time, and then my son was like an infant, and we used to watch them all the time. And then I went out and bought like all the DVDs when they came out. I'm like, oh, this was a great show. But I don't think I've watched them since I bought them. I just know I wanted to have them, but I'm gonna have to go back and look at that now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was their arc in that season. And then the only other place I know her from is she was like one of the bosses in the first Marvel Ultimate Alliance game
Hmm.
from way back when. She was
Yeah.
one of the bosses along with like Loki in the Frost Giant fight level or something. So it was kind of like when we were watching it, and she was using her powers against or using her magics against C20, and there was kind of like a little bit of a green glow, and she's wearing like greenish clothes that are kind of Loki-esque, but not really. And then she's got
Right.
the blonde hair, so I was like, well, maybe this is just like a Enchantress, or we were talking, and you kind of mentioned like, well, maybe they're merging a couple of characters together, which they do in
Yeah.
adaptations and stuff to kind of help things fit along a little bit more smoothly. So that's fine. But yeah, Sylvie didn't really mean anything. I don't know who that is. I did look her up. Apparently, she's part of like the Young Masters, which is like the Masters of Evil version for like the Young Avengers, I think. So she's got some
Okay.
background in there, and she has ties with Loki and stuff. But yeah, I'm not too familiar.
So so Sylvie, to your knowledge, is not the name of Enchantress. Are those
She's
separate?
like Enchantress too, right? So the original
Okay.
Enchantress
Okay.
was Amara or Amora, I think. And so
Okay.
the new Enchantress is Sylvie Lushton or Lishton. I looked her up, but I don't
Okay.
I don't remember. It was like a quick
Okay.
Wikipedia article, and I forgot.
But she is a version of Enchantress. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, right.
All right. So yeah, this could be a combo, right? It could be like they're just merging the like Lady Loki with Enchantress. That could be for sure. Um, it could also be something like maybe she learned her enchantment abilities um, from Enchantress, and then assumed the name Sylvie. Like maybe. So you know how you just described how there's like an original Enchantress, right?
Hmm.
And then there's Sylvie, which is like the next version. So maybe, yeah, maybe in this series, Lady Loki learned from Enchantress and then just assumed the name Sylvie. So yeah, maybe they are just like the same thing. I don't know. Maybe they're just combined. Or maybe she killed Enchantress. I don't know, and assumed the name Sylvie. I have no idea.
Or
But it's
she got
interesting.
her powers from the Power Broker after he made a
Ah,
deal with
okay.
Mephisto. So there's that too.
Yep. There you go. There you go. Speaking of Mephisto, um, they didn't touch on this at all in this episode, but I got to get your opinion on this. So, like, there's this whole big, everyone's thinking that Kang is behind this, and we know we're eventually getting Kang, right? And I think the Ant-Man film. But
Mhm.
that's like a ways off from now. That's like pretty far down the road. I think that's like sometime in 2022, right? We've got like 4 movies coming out before that. So I don't know. I don't feel like they're going to put Kang in this series. I guess they could. I mean, they referred to Thanos pretty early in the Avengers uh, line, like, but I don't know. I'm not. I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to like. I don't want to be like go down a Mephisto rabbit hole. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no,
But
I'm good with the TVA just being the good guys, bad guys kind of, for the
mhm,
series. I'm okay with it.
yeah. All right. Back to the story. So the unlikely tentative team fool the guards and they board this transport train that's taking citizens to the Ark, I guess, right? And yeah, the Ark is like this big escape vessel to evacuate the planet before it's destroyed. And this is kind of where the real fun and great dialogue really begins, right? This is where they have the whole conversation about love that you were talking about. This is where um, we find out through the conversation that Loki's into chicks and dudes. He doesn't discriminate when it comes to getting
Yeah.
down. Yeah. So people kind of, I guess, established that his gender or his sex is fluid. That was like on some forums early in the series, and people have been talking about it online for like weeks. I don't know if you saw that,
Hmm.
but it was this big debacle. Like I could give a shit less, but that's what it was. So, but this kind of confirms it. I wouldn't say he's bisexual, right? I mean, I don't even think that's an accurate description because he's kind of like, I don't know what you would call it, like pangendered. He's not really a gender, and he's not really a sex. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
He's Loki, and that's what he is. But even in the reveal, like he didn't spell it out. She just says like, maybe there were princesses, maybe there were princes, and he's like, yeah, a bit of both. Like
yep,
just kind of just very casual, the way that they
yeah,
handled it, which I
yeah.
appreciate. It's they didn't make a big deal out of it. They're like, hey, here you go.
Yes, I do too. I really appreciate when they do that because a big company, a big huge mega corporation like Disney, uh, they could do whatever they want. They could be real heavy-handed with messaging. They could, do whatever they wanted, and they would have a big enough audience to support them regardless of how they do it. I think.
Hmm.
Um, well, I mean, I don't know. As long as they didn't do something terrible, but I feel like I like the way they're handling things that I don't I don't even know how to describe it. Stuff that's in the public conversation, maybe politically, maybe, and they did this a lot in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right?
Hmm.
With
Yeah.
race and with like immigration and things like that. Like they had some messaging on that, but they didn't just cram it down your throats. They didn't um, spell it out like you were an idiot. They weren't preaching to anyone. It was really just kind of like it worked in the story. And I appreciate that. Whenever they can actually work something into a story or into a conversation without making it seem like it was inserted purposefully, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Same here.
So during this conversation, uh, Loki shares some of these sweet memories about his mom, and for me, that just kind of emboldens, this belief that like that's his whole aim. His whole aim is really just to save his mom, and that's ultimately why he wants to rule the TVA. But what I was saying was it appears like they're sharing so much, but I think Loki actually calls this out later. But Sylvie's not actually sharing a whole lot. Like
Hmm.
she's not sharing a lot of her background. Did you notice that?
I did, yeah. I mean, here we are, 3 episodes in. We know that she's, quote unquote, the villain. Uh,
Hmm.
I have no idea what her motivation is or where she's coming from at all at this point, which I like that. I kind of like that. One, it keeps the focus on Loki, and letting us really kind of peel back those layers. And I think it's also going to make it a lot more personal when we finally figure out what she's fighting for or against.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's also it makes her still feel villainous. You know what I mean? When she's mysterious like that.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, personally, I don't think like my whole theory is like by the end of this series, we're gonna get a trio. Like it's gonna be him and her and Mobius teaming up against TVA. Like that's kind of where I think it's going. By the end, once they reveal to Mobius what you know who he is, we'll get to that in a little bit. But I think there's a Three Musketeers scenario going to happen here. But so yeah, keeping her though mysterious for now is perfect. I think it works really well. And I could be totally wrong. She could just be the bad guy. I mean, who knows? Uh, but I don't think so. I don't think so. So this is when they get to talking about love and trying to define it. And she says love is hate, which I don't even know what that means. Like I have no idea what love is hate. That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. So Loki starts a sentence. He's like, love is, but he doesn't finish it. And then Loki gets wasted. Like, and I don't know what happened here. Did Sylvie fall asleep because she was so tired? Is that what happened?
It seems that way, yeah. Like they were trying to blend in or kind of keep a low profile and rest. I think at one point she says we should get some rest before,
Mhm.
we get to the arc because it's going to take a lot. So it seems like, yeah, she just fell asleep at the table, and so Loki, the personable guy that he is, decided to go and mingle and stuff. I love the not to get like in detail on the song, but I love the end of the song where he like takes a shot and he yells like another, and he throws the glass down
Yes.
just like Thor in the first movie. That's still one of like my favorite lines, and I do that with my. I don't actually smash glasses at my house, but I'll do that with my kids. I'll finish a drink and yell another and pretend to throw my and they just look at me like I'm an idiot because they haven't seen Thor since they were like one. But yeah,
It,
that was fun. That was a cool little just callback, like Asgardian culture.
you just ruined the illusion for me because I was picturing Ryan Frisari getting wasted and smashing glasses on his like kitchen floor. Another.
Another, just throwing them down. Yeah, maybe
No,
if I beat them in Super Smash Brothers, I'll just slam their Joy Cons down and yell another, then make them earn allowance money to replace the Joy Cons. It's good parenting.
evil dad. Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I love that whole scene. Like she wakes up to him like yeah, singing in Asgardian. This kind of I don't know what is it like a what would you call that? What kind of a song? Like a drinking song?
Yeah,
Like
just a drinking song, a pub song, a tavern
yeah,
song, whatever. What is that, a shanty that they sing on like a pirate ship?
yeah. I thought you'd appreciate that. It seemed kind of up your alley. It feels like yeah something you would see like in a tavern in like Lord of the Rings or
Hmm.
like or even in an Irish pub here in the United States. Like you see that
Yeah, no,
anywhere. But
absolutely.
I love it though. I love that. That was a great scene. But she wakes up and sees this, and she's like, "What the hell is he doing?" Like, and she confronts him like, "Look, people are looking at you weird. They're getting suspicious." And he's like, "I'm not drunk. I'm full. Mind you, I'm very full." Like, I thought that was a great response to her like accusing him of being drunk. So, uh, the dialogue strikes again because Loki finally finishes his thoughts on love with this whole metaphor of love is like a dagger, right? And I wanted to write this entire thing down, but I didn't. But everyone knows what we're talking about. Like,
Hmm.
dude, this was so good. Like Sylvie says it's a terrible metaphor, but I actually thought like it was pretty damn profound. Like it was a great metaphor.
And I think it's a perfect metaphor for someone like Loki, right?
Yes.
Who's constantly stabbing his loved ones in the back. I mean, you harken back to the Thor Ragnarok story where Thor's telling Valkyrie and Bruce about the time where Loki's like, "Hey, come look at this snake," and so Thor looks at the
Yeah.
snake, and then the snake turns into Loki and stabs him. Like, I mean, he's
Yes.
constantly stabbing his loved ones, like with
I know.
with daggers, right? So, I mean, it fits perfectly.
Yeah. I feel like there's going to be some dagger stabbing in the series. Like 100%. We had Mobius referencing it earlier, and then we have this whole scene. Like somebody's getting stabbed with a dagger. Like
Mhm.
put it down. That's happening by the end of the series. Probably a main character going to get stabbed by a dagger. Right after Mobius rides a jet ski. It's happening. So, um but yeah, seriously though, I have a bone to pick with Sylvie because her really lame, not thought out at all, love is hate is garbage compared to Loki's like well thought out metaphor for love of being a dagger.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. So they end up being found out. Obviously, Loki got a little too drunk, and people started to take notice of them. They get thrown off the train, and then kind of walking hopelessly, we get the bombshell of the episode, which is the revelation that the employees of the TVA are all variants, just like them. So now I mentioned this to you when we were talking earlier. Uh, you kind of already suspected this. So how did you come about like thinking that these were all variants?
Right. So they keep Loki especially kind of keeps referring to the timekeepers, the leaders of the TVA as gods. But he also keeps referring to them as lizard people because we see
Yeah.
the one statue or two statues or whatever of the timekeepers, and they're reptilian looking kind of characters. And just based on mythology and stuff, every time there's like a creation myth where a god creates humanity or whatever, they tend to create it in their image, right? So if
Yeah.
all of the people that work for the TVA were created by the timekeepers, why aren't they all reptile people? Like they're not. They're just all regular normal people. And of course, like you mentioned, Mobius's obsession with jet skis, like that had to come from somewhere. His
Yeah.
explanation was kind of, it left something lacking, at least from Loki's perspective. So
Hmm.
I just kind of had an idea that like they weren't all made by the TVA, or they weren't all made by the timekeepers. I didn't necessarily suspect that they were all variants, but I didn't think that what they were telling us was the full truth.
Right. Right. I kind of suspected that too, but I guess specifically that they're variants kind of threw me for a loop. I'm like, oh wow, so they've all been plucked from the timeline like that. That means there's other versions of them out there on the sacred timeline. Like, you know what I mean? Like there there is a Mobius living on the sacred timeline right now. And there is a C20 and all these people are living on the timeline in the actual world
Hmm.
that we already know.
It's messed up. I mean, they could be the real versions could be dead in the sacred timeline, like
Yeah.
Loki is. Um,
Hmm.
and which is another thing. Like these secrets are being kept from the TVA employees. I don't know what they're called.
Mm-mm.
Time
Mm.
agents? Is that? I feel like Mobius said it at one point, but I don't
I think
recall.
I know he's considered an agent, so I don't know. I don't know exactly what. He's also called a consultant
Hmm. Yeah.
in episode 2 when he's talking to what's her name? Renslayer.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what you call him. But yeah, I was just thinking of something and I kind of lost it. The so another scenario that you just made me think of is they could have all been plucked, like you said, like before they're going to die anyway. Um, we already know that we figured out that apocalyptic events are a good place to hide out because no matter what you do, like it doesn't change anything. They definitely could have been plucked from those apocalyptic events, right before they were going to die anyway,
Yeah.
something like that, or I don't know. I if they're variants, then they probably went off the path at some point. But I feel like the TVA could also just pluck people from wherever, right? Like, couldn't they just step in, take someone?
Probably. I mean, it seems like they're the ones that determine whatever the continuity is for the sacred
Right.
timeline anyway. So if they want to change it, they're like the bad guys in Wanted. Remember with like the weave thing where they were just making up history or whatever as it went along. Like the TVA kind of is doing that same thing, it seems like.
Yeah. So eventually Loki decides that, hey, we could still worm our way onto this arc, right? And then we can make sure the arc makes it. Because she's like, the arc's not going to make it off the planet. Like this is a apocalyptic event. Everyone dies, including everyone on that arc. So he's like, well, we could change that. And it's kind of crazy. So that would definitely create another, if they did this, and obviously we know how the episode turns out, but just that they have the idea like, well, let's just make sure a huge amount of people escape this apocalyptic event, that would like drastically alter the timeline.
Oh yeah. It would bring, an entire legion of TVA people in there to have to fix it, right? So I think that was their
Yeah.
plan, wasn't it? If they did something big enough, it would bring enough of
Right.
them they can get another tempad or something.
Is that what it was?
I thought,
I don't know.
isn't that what their plan? Isn't that
I
why they
don't
decided to
know.
do what they did?
I don't think so. I think they were just trying to get on the arc, and I don't know. Maybe. Okay. I'm confused now.
I thought Loki, the way that Loki convinced Sylvie to go along with it is like, hey, why don't we the timekeepers have all these plans, why don't we mess up their plans? But I thought the reason why he was saying that is because if they messed up the plans big enough, it
Oh,
would
okay, okay.
bring more TVA people in there.
You know,
Maybe I'm just projecting because that's what I would do in this
you
situation.
know,
Like, hey, how do we get out of here?
that's why I'm glad I have a guest on, because I watched this episode 3 times, dude, and I did not catch that part of him saying that. I thought they were just trying to get on the arc and then make sure somehow that it made it off. And I'm like, how are they gonna do that? Like, but I don't think that was. I mean, ultimately the plan was to get the TVA there, and that's something that I was thinking, and like my prediction for like how do they get out of this? So, because okay, so the episode ends with the arc not making it. Right? Like before they even get to it, it explodes. It gets hit by a chunk of the planet, and it's destroyed. And Loki or Sylvie are left there on this doomed moon, and it's like there's no way out now. And I thought it was a great scene. That final scene, like Loki's just staring up, breathing heavily, like in disbelief that like this is it, and she literally just turns around and walks away.
Mhm.
It was, I don't know, it was a great shot, that final scene.
It's like Loki still hasn't caught on to the fact yet that he fails at everything that he
Mhm.
does, even though
Yeah,
Mobius pointed it out to him and like showed him, here's every scheme you had, here's every time you failed. And yet here he's
yeah.
still shocked that his plan didn't work.
Okay, so how do you think they get out of this? I mean, they
Um,
left it on a cliffhanger. The planet or the moon that they're on is doomed. It's an apocalyptic event. How do they get out of this by next episode?
well, so they built up the whole thing in the second episode, right? Where Loki tells Mobius, "Hey, I think the variant's hanging out in apocalyptic uh, events, right?" So
Yep.
I think what's going to happen is Mobius is going to start jumping around, and eventually they'll land at this one, and they'll be able to at least get him out, and we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, I think they planted the seed early on in the second episode, so that when we got to this point, when the TVA shows up, we're actually expecting it rather than like, whoa, where did they come from? Like, of course they're going to show up, and uh, we'll see how Loki plays off his apparent betrayal of Mobius, though. That should be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I actually forgot. Like on my last episode, we were talking about that last scene, and I don't think the guest and I actually talked about. I had Noel on, and I don't think we actually talked about the fact that Loki went through the portal at the end. Like that was the very last thing that happened. It was like Mobius is like, wait, no, Loki, and he just jumps through. Um, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't touch on that, but yeah, that was a pretty big moment there. He just took off on him. But I mean, I expected it the whole time, but
Well, it's
yeah,
Loki. Like if there's not betrayal upon betrayal and stuff, then it wouldn't fit the character, right? So there's got to be those moments. So I just think
yeah,
that however that confrontation will go, I'm just looking forward to seeing Wilson and Hiddleston acting that one out.
yeah. So have you heard anything about this time stone theory? I don't know how much you follow like online, like what people are saying about the series or anything. Maybe not at all, but uh, so you remember in episode 1 where he discovers like there's all these time stones, or I mean all these infinity stones that are basically useless because they're in the TVA. They're like paperweights.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like that a lot. That they're just like, nah, we have a ton of them. They don't have any power here. Like whatever. Um, I don't remember if there were time stones in the drawer though. I mean, they had all of them in there, but I didn't. I wasn't
Yeah,
specifically looking like, are there green ones in here? Because the green's the
yeah,
time stone, right? Because that's the one that Strange has, and the
yes,
Eye of Agamotto, and yeah.
yep,
Um, I I don't follow along a lot of the rumors and speculation
okay,
on the internet, mostly because I don't follow the comics, and so this is like the one movie universe where like I don't already know everything that's happening, and I actually kind of like being surprised every time there's a
yeah,
big twist in the MCU. But I did read
same.
like the splash line or the tagline or whatever the brief synopsis for the Multiverse of Madness, and it
Hmm.
says like Doctor Strange, who exploring stuff with his time stone, stumbles upon the multiverse, something like that. So I
Yeah,
mean, I'm sure it'll come into play somehow. I know one of the staff writers for the series is the co-writer of the Multiverse of
yeah,
Madness screenplay. So there's
yeah,
got to be something. I think that this will be the exception that proves the rule, right? Where the series are standalone and they can't really affect the movies. They can play off of them and they can add to it, but they can't really affect it. But I think maybe this one's the one that is the exception where this one actually does set up something.
yeah, yeah. I've been saying that from the beginning, from that first episode. I'm like, dude, they could do so much more in this series than they could in the others because um, our version of Loki is dead, so they could do whatever they want with this variant. Like, it doesn't have to end where it actually it wouldn't be as good if it ended where it began. Like, because Loki's dead. Like, we don't want Loki to die. And we already know that there is a season 2 of Loki is planned. No, I don't know if you heard that, but that's already been confirmed. There is going to be a season 2 of Loki. So
Nice. No, I
that's
hadn't seen that. That's awesome.
yeah, that's already one difference between this series and the other series, which feel very standalone-ish.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to lead into the films, but I don't know how they could work another series called WandaVision. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wouldn't work because it was all based around the TV series idea and um, Wanda and Vision together. Like, it wouldn't work. And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier is now Captain America and the Winter Soldier, so it wouldn't even be the same series if they tried to do it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, Loki, if they're going to be a season 2, he's got to be living at the end of this, and so they're not going to leave him dead. Um, and then also this it seems like it's the catalyst for the multiverse of madness. And like you said, there's a writer on this show that is also a writer on Multiverse of Madness. It definitely feels like this is the beginning of that storyline of our big multiversal whatever's going to happen with the MCU for the next few films. It feels like this is the beginning of it, where none of the other series seem like they were that pivotal, like that they were going to affect the MCU as much as this one so far. So I don't know. They could, I don't know, close this thing up and then introduce the multiverse another way, but that would be silly. I feel like this is definitely the way you do it with um, the branches, right? Those are like alternate realities. This is a multiverse. That's exactly what a multiverse is. So yeah, I definitely think that's what this series is for. That's what I feel like. Um, so Oh, so the reason I brought up the time stone is because in episode 1, Loki it was okay. So they reference the time stones. They're like, oh yeah, we have a ton of these laying around here. They're like paperweight. Some of the people just keep them, whatever, for keepsakes. But then later, when he's hopping around or whatever, when he's trying to get away, he stops at one of the desks and he's like playing around with these time stones, and he picks up, or the time stones. He's playing with the Infinity Stones, and he picks up a time stone.
Oh, okay.
And we never actually see him put it back. So it may be a stretch. I don't know. In this episode that we saw today, you remember when that giant building was about to fall on them, and he was just like, "I got it," and yep. he just like I've never seen Loki have that power before. Like, what was that?
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if that, yeah, obviously at TVA headquarters, the Stones don't have any power, right? But that doesn't mean that they don't have power once they go out into the normal time. So who knows? Yeah, maybe that was him doing something with a time stone where he wasn't stopping the building from falling with some weird magic or telekinesis or something. He was just stopping time for that building using a time stone. I could see him doing something like that.
Yeah, it almost looked like he reversed it because it literally was falling on them and then it went back the way it came. Like he threw it away. So either he pushed it back the way it came or he reversed, that object's time or whatever. So I don't know. It was just something that I heard. Someone was like, "Oh, he never put down that time stone. Like he could have that with him right now." Like, so that's one thing, and that could be another way that they end up getting off this planet. Like, if it's not, because I also thought that like, okay, maybe there's a tracker on Loki from the TVA or something. Maybe they can track him through the timeline, or like you said, maybe he'll just Owen Wilson will be, or Mobius will be just bouncing around looking at all the apocalyptic events to try to find him. But yeah, definitely. It could be that time stone thing. I know it's kind of a stretch, but it could be Loki might have a time stone in his pocket, man.
Yeah. Very well could.
Yeah. So, all right. As we're kind of wrapping up here, do you have any thoughts on where the series is going to go from here? Like how it ends or how important it is? Like I said, we were just kind of talking about, what do you think? Like in terms of individually how the series ends, and then does it affect the greater MCU in that big way that we were talking about?
Yeah, I honestly have no idea how it's going to end. I'm not sure what they're building towards. I don't know. Maybe all the variants are going to rebel against the timekeepers, and so Mobius will somehow be the main timekeeper at the end. Maybe they mention like, hey, there's this Earthling, Doctor Strange, who he knows his way around time, um, which could set up the multiverse of madness. I don't know. So so yeah, I don't know how this season's going to end or this series is going to end. Completely blank slate for me. Um, but will it affect? Like I said, I think this might be the one that's the exception that proves the rule. Like this is the one that could actually affect stuff. There can be some event that causes the multiverse to splinter, which then at the beginning of Multiverse of Madness is Doctor Strange is like, hey, where are all these branches coming from all of a sudden? Like, it could actually play into it and lead up to it in a way that the other two I don't think would have been able to move into the next thing. I mean, unless the next movie was like Captain America, then maybe they could have moved Falcon and Winter Soldier directly into that. Or if they had done, and I know that one was originally supposed to be out before WandaVision, and the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to be out this year rather than next year. So I mean, it could very well have been like WandaVision and then Loki and then Multiverse of Madness, where they actually all three of them kind of fed into each other, but because of circumstance, they're not quite. But I still think that this one has the potential where it can actually affect directly the next film, not obviously the next film, but the next big event, which is the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, I feel like just the way that you said that about how it could have went right into Multiverse of Madness. you're right, and I think they could definitely still make it work, because they've always done that. Like you can throw in a couple origin films in between, kind of like having Avengers, um, and then having they had Avengers Infinity War, and then we got what did we get?
Captain Marvel
Captain Marvel,
and
right?
something. I think there was one more in between. Maybe not, but or Ant-Man and Wasp. I think was in
Oh
between.
yeah, and then Ant-Man and Wasp was it? Okay, okay. So Captain Marvel and then Ant-Man and Wasp. Were those both in between that? That's crazy.
Yeah, I
Okay, so
think. Yeah, I think
you're right.
it was like Endgame was in April, right?
Right.
And then or not Endgame, sorry, Infinity War was like April, and then Ant-Man and Wasp was like August, and then Captain Marvel was March the next year, and then Endgame was April. So it was like right after it.
Yeah. Well, they're really smart, and Kevin Feige's a friggin' world builder, dude. So I feel like they can make anything work. Like no matter, even if with the schedule getting kind of out of whack. I mean, all you have to do is like insert an end credit scene that ties into the next movie. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
ties into the next movie. Um, that maybe has nothing to do with the movie you just watched, but it ties into the next one really well. So yeah, and they've done that all along. You'd see at the end of a film something that seems to have nothing to do with the film you're watching, but then it's like building something for later. Um,
Yep.
so I think they could definitely make it work. But yet it's interesting that you said um, that about how it was originally kind of planned, because that's kind of how the series were too, right? Originally, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was going to be first, and then we were going to get back to back. We were going to get WandaVision and then Loki, and then the What If animated series. And I feel like all of those kind of go together with Multiverse of Madness as well.
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah,
feel like
definitely.
What If is maybe more than just a little anthology unconnected series, and maybe kind of like oh, let's take a look into the multiverse?
Yeah, I mean, I think so now.
Mhm.
Earlier when it came out, it was like, oh, I like this because the What If comics are fun. It's just like, hey, what if Wolverine was the leader of Alpha Flight? That plug and talk and snicked over here.
Mhm.
That was a random what if. So it was fun to do that. But now it's like, hey, what if that timeline didn't actually? What if that multiversal timeline didn't die, and this is how it played out? So it gives each of these what if stories like a little bit more gravity, knowing
Yeah.
that like yeah, it's a cartoon and it's like what if something was different, but it's also like somewhat canonical because that isn't just a random story. It is actually a splinter of a multiverse, possibly.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It makes me even that much more excited for the animated series. You know what? I've been excited, kind of like you. I knew the What If comics, so I was excited when I heard they were going to do this animated series. For one, because it was going to be the first animated thing to be connected with the MCU. I didn't think it was going to tie into the storylines. Like I kind of think it might be, like you said, canonical now. But I was still really excited just because I love the comics, and I don't know. I just thought it would be great to have a what. I couldn't believe we were getting a what if series. Like every time they do something, it surprises me. Like what? They're making that? Like Guardians of the Galaxy? What? Like they just do whatever they want now. I think it's great. So yeah, but I'm that much more excited now for the What If series. I can't wait for that. I don't know exactly how I'm going to cover it here on the show. I think it's 10 episodes, and that's another one that's already been slated for several seasons, the What If series. So that's cool. Like knowing that we're going to get more. But yeah, I don't know what that's going to look like when we cover it here on Marvel Plus, because they're going to be half-hour episodes. We might have shorter episodes here on the show, and I just don't know how you cover a show that doesn't actually tie in. But I mean, I'm sure I'll work it out. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But Ryan, thank you for being on, man. It's always a pleasure. And I know Talking Snicked is, I'm going to call it on hiatus, but you are going to be on another podcast soon with our friends Dave and Chris over on Comics in Motion, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to be on. We're recording this weekend, and we're going to cover the Wolverine. So the 2013 James Mangold Wolverine in Japan movie, which I'm a huge fan. I love that movie, so I'm really excited to talk about it. Dave's awesome. Getting to know him from the round table that we were on that you graciously hosted. It was a lot of fun. So he extended an invitation, and of course I'm going to take him up on it. A chance to talk Wolverine with that guy, definitely going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, man. I'm definitely going to be checking that out, and I hope to have you back here soon. Like, come back to Marvel Plus. Maybe you can do one of those what if series with me. Maybe a couple, because I don't know how many people are going to be interested in coming on to talk about the what if series. But I know you'll be interested. So maybe it'll be you. Maybe it'll just be me and you talking about what if.
Yeah, that could probably work.
But thanks again, man. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.